my name is Judith Anderson, and we're going to be talking about Alexander Graham Bell this morning. Have y'all ever heard the name? Yes? Okay. Well, let me tell you a little bit about him. Alexander Graham Bell was a famous inventor. Do any of y'all know what he invented? Yes, Faith?
Phones.
Phones, yes, you're right, but that's not all he invented. Let me tell you a little bit about him. Alexander Graham Bell was born March 3rd, 1847. He actually was born in Edinburgh, Scotland, but then he moved to Ontario, Canada. He lived there for a while, and then he finally moved to the U.S. and lived in Boston after that. His dad, as well as his grandfather, worked with deaf and hard of hearing children. So he followed in their footsteps and decided to work with children as well who were deaf. He worked with elocution, which is the way that you speak. He decided to start inventing things because he was trying to find something that would work in order to help his mom, because his mom was gradually becoming deaf, and help his wife. His wife actually was one of his students that he had, but then after she turned 19, he ended up marrying her. He worked for both of these ladies in order to find something to help them. Bell started to work on the transmission of speech in order to help his mom, as well as his wife and all the children that he worked for. In 1874, he developed a plan for the telephone, which is where we began. The first sentence ever said through the telephone was to his assistant, Mr. Watson, and it was, "Mr. Watson, come here, I want to see you." That's the first thing that was ever said through the telephone line. He was not the only one that was trying to make a telephone or make something that would transmit voice or sounds. There was another man named Elijah Gray, but Mr. Bell beat him by just a few hours, so legally the one who was said that created the telephone was Mr. Bell. So he got credit for it. He also made metal detectors. Now, do y'all know what metal detectors are? Mark, do you know what a metal detector is? What is a metal detector? Faith, can you tell me?
Sometimes you use it on beaches to find like coins. To
find metal, that's right. It's exactly what the name says. It's a metal detector. It detects metal. Well, he made one, a rough one, that he made, let's see, he made it from previous people's ideas and his own, and he actually used it on the U.S. president at that time, which was James Garfield. James Garfield had been shot, and he was laying in bed, and they were just going to tell him that he was going to die. So he decided, Mr. Bell decided that he was going to try to go help him. And the way he was going to go help him was he was going to use a metal detector to find where that bullet was in him. He scanned him several times, but it just didn't come out, and they couldn't figure out why. Some people say that it was because they laid President Garfield on a metal frame bed, and Mr. Bell did not know that, so it kind of skewed the results of the test. Another thing that Mr. Bell made was a metal vacuum jacket, which helps you breathe. Him and Mabel, his wife, had a son named Edward, and Edward, when he was a baby, had trouble breathing. He had respiratory problems, and after his death, Mr. Bell did not just sit. He just decided he needed to do something about that. So he took that grief and made this metal vacuum jacket, which helps people breathe. Now, that science that was used in that, people used it in the 1950s for all the polio people, because they had a polio epidemic. They used it to help those people breathe. So Bell's inventions also helped further along, even though they were changed a little bit. Another thing that Bell made, which just happens to be the one that he says was his best invention, is a photophone. A photophone is similar to a telephone, but it allows sound to travel through a beam of light instead of through the wires. It's a beam of light. So he always said that was his big one, the one that he thought was the best one, even though now we say it's just a telephone. Actually, the photophone was the beginning of ideas of what we have of fiber optic communications, which is what we use a lot now. After that, he turned to aeronautics, and I know, Mark, you're going to love this one, because he started with inventing large kites. And in 1907, a large kite was able to carry a person. So him and his associates also made a movable section of the airplane wing, so it could help it when it rolls. It could control the roll. So, and they took parts off of a bike and put it as a landing gear and takeoff. So plane was able to land and take off of a flight area. One of the other things, after the aeronautics stage that he was in, he took all of that information and he went and he actually read a magazine, and he got interested because he never ever stopped. He would just keep learning and learning and learning. And him and his associates started working on a hydrofoil boat. A hydrofoil boat is actually a regular boat, but it's got these things that go underneath it, which helps it go high speeds right above the water, which is really cool. According to ideafinder.com, his final size hydrodrome in 1917 reached speeds in excess of 70 miles per hour. Now that's pretty fast. That's faster than when you're driving down the highway. So, and of course this boat was the fastest one for many, many years after that. So, so all these inventions are just a few that were changed throughout the years. But we use one or another in different ways. Again, the best one that's known, the telephone. According to the International Telecommunications Union, over 5 billion phones are used today. 5 billion. That's a lot of phones. He continued to search for answers until he died in 1922. According to inventionpop.com, all the telephones went silent for 1 whole minute, the time that his funeral was supposed to start. For 1 whole minute, everything was silent. So, do any of y'all have phones? You do? Let me see your phones. That is because, these are all cell phones, that is because of what Alexander Graham Bell invented many, many years ago. And the reason was for his family. That's the whole start of this. And now you all can communicate anywhere you are around the world. So he changed the world.